The world had changed. Where once there were bustling cities and green forests, now there was only silence and ruin. The skies, once blue and clear, were now covered with dark clouds, filled with ash and dust. The air was heavy and the earth was dry and cracked. It was as if the planet itself had given up, just like the people who once called it home. John walked through the deserted streets holding his young daughter, Lila, close to him. She was only 5 years old, too young to understand the full horror of what had happened. But she was old enough to feel the fear that hung in the air like a thick fog. Her small hand clutched tightly at her father's worn jacket, her eyes wide with worry. "Daddy, where is everyone?" Lila asked, her voice small and trembling. John looked down at her, his heart aching. He didn't know how to explain the truth to her, that almost everyone was gone, either dead or fled to the stars. The last great war had destroyed everything. The leaders of the world, in their arrogance and anger, had unleashed weapons so powerful that they wiped out entire cities in seconds. Those who survived the initial blasts soon fell to the sickness that followed, a sickness that spread through the air and the water, leaving nothing but death in its wake. Only a few were lucky enough to escape. The rich and powerful had left first, fleeing the dying planet in ships built for the stars. They took with them their wealth, their technology, and their hope, leaving behind those who had no means to leave. John had tried to get on one of those ships, tried to find a way off the planet for him and Lila. But there was no room left, no place for a simple man like him and his little daughter. So they were left behind. The days passed slowly. John and Lila wandered from place to place, searching for food and shelter, always hoping they might find other survivors. But the cities were empty. The roads deserted. The world was a graveyard, and they were the last living souls. John kept trying to send out distress signals, using an old radio he had found in a crumbling building. He sent messages into the void of space, hoping that someone, anyone, might hear him and come to their rescue. But every day the silence continued. No one was coming for them. They were truly alone. Lila grew weaker as the days went on. The lack of food and clean water was taking its toll on her small body. She often slept, too tired to do much else. John did his best to care for her, finding what little food he could, keeping her warm at night. But he knew it wasn't enough. He knew she needed more than he could give. One night, as John sat beside Lila's small, shivering form, he looked up at the sky. The stars were hidden behind the thick clouds, but he knew they were there. He wondered if anyone out there was looking back, if anyone knew that there were still people left on this dying planet. He wondered if they cared. As he sat there, lost in his thoughts, a strange light appeared in the sky. At first, he thought it was just a trick of his tired eyes. But then the light grew brighter. It moved slowly across the sky, unlike anything he had ever seen before. His heart began to race. Could this be the answer to his prayers? Could someone finally be coming to help them? John stood up, his eyes fixed on the light. He didn't know what it was, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever was coming, it was their last hope. John's heart pounded as the strange light in the sky grew closer. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen before, smooth and bright, like a star that had decided to come down to earth. He held Lila tighter, her small body trembling in his arms. She was awake now, staring up at the sky with wide eyes. "Daddy, what is that?" Lila whispered, her voice full of fear and wonder. "I don't know, sweetheart," John replied, his own voice shaky, "but I think we're about to find out." The light descended slowly, hovering above the ground a short distance from where they stood. As it got closer, John could see that it wasn't just a light. It was some kind of ship. It was sleek and silver, unlike anything built by human hands. It made no sound as it landed, the ground beneath it barely disturbed. John took a step back, his instincts telling him to run, but there was nowhere to go. He was too tired, too weak, and Lila was in no condition to move. All he could do was wait and hope that whatever was inside the ship meant them no harm. The ship's door opened with a soft hiss, and a figure stepped out. John's breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, or at least she looked like a woman. Her skin was pale and shimmering, almost like silver. Her hair flowed around her like liquid light, and her eyes were a deep, vibrant blue that seemed to glow in the dim light. She was tall and slender, her movements graceful as she approached them. Lila gasped, her fear momentarily forgotten. "She's so beautiful," she whispered. John couldn't disagree. There was something otherworldly about this woman, something that made it impossible to look away. But he couldn't let himself be distracted. They didn't know who she was or what she wanted. He had to be careful. The woman stopped a few feet away from them, her gaze soft and kind. She spoke, but not with her mouth. Her words appeared in John's mind, clear and calm, as if she were speaking directly to his thoughts. "Do not be afraid," she said. "My name is Elara. I mean you no harm." John's eyes widened in shock. He had never experienced anything like this before. Telepathy? Was she reading his mind? He tried to think clearly, to push away the fear and confusion. "Who are you?" John asked aloud, his voice trembling. "What do you want with us?" Elara tilted her head slightly, her expression gentle. "I am from a distant world far from here. My people have been watching your planet for some time. We saw what happened to your world, and we mourned for the loss of life. I came to see if there were any survivors, and I found you." John's mind raced. Was she telling the truth? Could he trust her? He looked down at Lila, who was staring at Elara with wide, curious eyes. She didn't seem afraid anymore, just fascinated. Lila spoke up, her voice small but steady. "Are you here to help us?" Elara smiled, a warm and comforting expression. "Yes, little one, I am here to help. I can see that you are unwell. May I help you feel better?" John hesitated, his protective instincts flaring. But Lila was so weak, so tired. She needed help, and he didn't have the means to give it to her. Slowly he nodded. Elara stepped closer, kneeling beside Lila. She placed a hand on Lila's forehead, and a soft, blue light flowed from her fingers. Lila's eyes fluttered closed, and for a moment John panicked. But then he saw it. Lila's breathing was steady, her face relaxed. She was healing. John felt a surge of hope. This alien, this beautiful being, was their only chance. Maybe, just maybe, they would survive after all. John watched as the stars streaked by outside the window of Elara's ship. He had never imagined he would leave Earth, let alone travel through space. The ship moved so smoothly it was almost like floating. There was no noise, no shaking, just the quiet hum of the ship's systems working silently around them. Lila sat next to him, her face pressed against the window, eyes wide with wonder. She had never seen anything like this before. The vastness of space, the glittering stars, and the colorful nebulae. They were all new and exciting to her. For the first time in a long while, John saw her smile, a real smile, not one forced by fear or sadness. "Daddy, look at all the stars. They're so pretty!" Lila exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. John smiled back at her, though inside he was still full of questions and doubts. "Yes, they are," he said softly, trying to match her enthusiasm. Elara stood nearby, observing them with a gentle expression. She seemed pleased to see Lila so happy. "You are seeing just a small part of the universe," she said. "There are many more wonders out there, far beyond what your people have ever known." John nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. They had left Earth behind, maybe forever. The place he had known as home was now just a distant memory, and the future was completely uncertain. He turned to Elara, his brow furrowed with concern. "Where exactly are we going?" he asked. Elara took a step closer, her gaze steady and reassuring. "We are traveling to my home planet, which we call Elindra. It is a safe place, full of life and beauty. You and Lila will be welcomed there, and you can start a new life." John sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how to feel about all this. Leaving Earth, going to a place I've never heard of. It's all so overwhelming." Elara nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I know this is difficult for you. Leaving one's home is never easy. But I promise you, Elindra is a place where you and Lila can find peace and happiness again." Lila, still captivated by the stars, suddenly turned to Elara. "Will there be other kids there? Can I make friends?" Elara smiled warmly at her. "Yes, Lila, there are many children on Elindra, and I'm sure you'll make lots of friends. They will be very excited to meet someone from another world." Lila's face lit up with excitement. The thought of making new friends made her feel better about everything that had happened. She returned to watching the stars, her worries fading away. But for John, the worries remained. He couldn't stop thinking about Earth, about the people they had left behind, if there were any. Had they made the right choice? Could he really start over on a planet so different from his own? He didn't know if he could let go of the past so easily. Elara seemed to sense his thoughts. She moved closer, her voice gentle. John, I know you are struggling with this. It is natural to feel conflicted, but I want you to know that you are not alone. I am here to help you, just as I have helped Lila. We will face this new journey together. John looked into her eyes and saw the sincerity there. Despite his doubts, he knew she was right. They had no choice but to move forward, to find a new life in this strange, vast universe. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, John made a silent promise to himself and to Lila. He would do whatever it took to keep her safe, to give her the life she deserved. No matter how far from Earth they were, as long as they were together, they would be okay. For now, all he could do was trust in Elara and hope that Alindra would be the new beginning they so desperately needed. The ship slowed as it approached Alindra, and John felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. He and Lila had spent days traveling through the dark emptiness of space, but now a vibrant world stretched out before them. Alindra was unlike anything John had ever seen. From space, it was a swirl of green, blue, and gold, with vast oceans, dense forests, and shining cities that sparkled like jewels under a warm, golden sun. Is that it? Lila asked, her voice full of wonder as she gazed out the window. Is that our new home? Yes, Elara replied with a smile. Welcome to Alindra. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, the details of the world below became clearer. The forests were lush and teeming with life, the oceans were a deep, clear blue, and the cities were grand and beautiful, with tall, elegant buildings made of shimmering materials that caught the light. Everything looked so alive, so full of color and energy, a stark contrast to the gray, desolate world they had left behind. The ship landed gently on a platform in one of the cities, and the doors opened to reveal a crowd of Elindrans waiting to greet them. They were just as beautiful as Elara, with their luminous skin and bright, intelligent eyes. They smiled warmly, their expressions welcoming and kind. Lila clutched John's hand as they stepped off the ship, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Daddy, they all look so nice," she whispered. John nodded, trying to take it all in. Everything was so different, so unfamiliar. He felt out of place, like a stranger in a world he couldn't understand. But he knew he had to be strong for Lila. Elara introduced them to the Elindrans, who welcomed John and Lila with open arms. They were given a place to live, a beautiful home surrounded by gardens filled with strange and wonderful plants that glowed softly in the evening light. Lila was overjoyed, running through the gardens, laughing and playing like she hadn't in so long. But John found it harder to adjust. The Elindrans were kind and helpful, always eager to teach him about their world, their technology, their way of life. But the more he learned, the more he felt the distance between himself and this new world. Everything was so advanced, so different from what he knew. He felt like he didn't belong. One day, as he sat alone in the garden, Elara came to sit beside him. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the weight of everything he had left behind. "You're not happy here," she said gently. John sighed, staring at the strange, glowing flowers. "It's not that I'm not happy. It's all so overwhelming. This place is beautiful, but it's not Earth. I keep thinking about the world I left, the people who might still be there. I don't know how to move on." Elara nodded, understanding. "It's normal to feel this way, John. Elindra is different. But that doesn't mean you can't find a place here. It will take time, but you don't have to do it alone. We're here to help you." John looked at her, appreciating her kindness. But deep down, he still felt lost. He missed the familiarity of Earth, even in its ruined state. He missed the life he once knew, and he wasn't sure he could ever fully embrace this new world. But then he heard Lila's laughter, saw her playing with the Elindran children, and something shifted in him. She was happy here, thriving in a way she never could have on Earth. Maybe that was enough. Maybe in time he could find a way to be happy too. Elara placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort. "You're stronger than you think, John. You've already come this far. Give yourself time and you'll find your place here." John nodded, taking a deep breath. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but for Lila's sake he would try. This was their new world now, and he had to find a way to make it home. Days turned into weeks, and John slowly began to settle into life on Elindra. Lila had adjusted quickly, making friends with the Elindran children and learning their ways with the excitement only a child could have. She laughed more, played more, and every day she seemed to grow stronger and happier. Seeing her smile made John feel a bit of peace, but there was still something deep inside him that couldn't let go of the past. One evening, as the golden sun set over the lush forests, John found himself walking through the garden alone. The air was warm and sweet, filled with the scent of the strange, glowing flowers that surrounded their home. Everything was calm and beautiful, but John's heart was heavy. He couldn't stop thinking about Earth. Even though it was a dying world, it was still his home. He felt a pull toward it, a sense of responsibility. There might still be others like him, survivors struggling to hold on. He had escaped, but what if there were people left behind who needed help? Could he really turn his back on them? As he walked, he found Ilara waiting for him by a small pond. The water reflected the soft light of the two moons in the sky, creating a serene and peaceful scene. Ilara looked up at him as he approached, her expression kind but serious. "You're troubled, John," she said gently. "I can feel it. What's on your mind?" John sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's Earth. I can't stop thinking about it. I know it's in ruins, but it's still my home. I keep wondering if there are people still there. People who need help. I can't just forget about them." Ilara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Your feelings are natural. It's not easy to leave behind the place you've known all your life. But you also have to think about Lila. She's happy here, safe. Elindra can be a fresh start for both of you." John looked away, torn between his love for his daughter and his sense of duty to the world he left behind. "I know. I see how happy she is here, and it means everything to me. But what if there are others who need help? What if I can do something for them?" Ilara was silent for a moment, considering his words. Then she spoke softly. "John, you are a good man. Your heart is in the right place. But you must also ask yourself if returning to Earth is truly what's best for you and Lila. The risks are great, and you've already been through so much. Sometimes the best way to honor the past is to build a better future." John felt the weight of her words, but the decision was not easy. He knew the risks of returning to Earth, the danger, the possibility that there might be no one left to save. But the thought of abandoning his world entirely felt wrong, like leaving a part of himself behind. He looked up at the sky, at the two moons shining brightly above. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "I want to help, but I also want to give Lila the life she deserves." Ilara placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm and comforting. "Whatever you decide, John, know that you are not alone. If you choose to return to Earth, we will help you. But if you choose to stay, we will welcome you as one of our own. The choice is yours, and we will respect it." John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He looked at the peaceful world around him, then thought of the ruins of Earth. Finally, he thought of Lila, her laughter and her smile. After a long moment, he made his decision.